Caught my wife cheating at her summer writing workshop, so I hired a PI, got evidence, and disappeared without a trace before she returned. I go by Andrew Baker, but my buddies call me Ab, never Andy. There's always some annoying drunk or ignorant guy who tries to act too familiar and calls me Andy. So, Andy, what's your job? They ask. I respond, I create this cool little gadget that cops can use from 40 feet away to check for drunk people. They've even started attaching them to radars around town. That usually shuts them up, but in case you haven't figured it out yet, that gadget isn't real. It's clear that I have little patience for foolishness. Lie to me, and things get worse. I'm a simple guy, not complex at all. I enjoy a straightforward life and find satisfaction in my work. I work as an engineer for a big national company with offices all over the country. I have friends, and while I'm not a heavy drinker, I do have an occasional beer. Honestly, I lean more towards nachos, but that's my battle. If I let it get out of control, I'll gain weight. So, I make an effort to keep myself in decent shape for my age. I used to go sailing every chance I got, but having a wife and 2 young daughters takes up a lot of time. Eventually, I sold the boat. That was just one of the compromises I've willingly made over the years, so I could have quality time with the people who really matter to me. I've been happily married to Karen for 25 years, she's a high school teacher. Our 2 daughters are now in college. Claire is studying at Brown University in Rhode Island, and her younger sister, Denise, is attending Boston University. I probably couldn't afford those expensive schools, but luckily, the girls are dedicated students and secured impressive scholarships. Our home is in North Carolina, specifically an area known as the Research Triangle. It's centered around some excellent universities in Raleigh and is surrounded by top-notch high-tech companies. Living and working here is wonderful. I could tell you about Carolina barbecue, but it would just make me hungry. I was somewhat disappointed when the girls opted for colleges up north, but I understand they needed to explore beyond their comfort zone, and that's ultimately a positive thing. Our daughters are amazing, intelligent, funny, charming young women with strong moral values. I worry about their safety daily, but I trust their decision-making. Witnessing them grow up and take their initial steps towards independence meant that my wife and I could finally have some time for ourselves again. I had been looking forward to this stage for a while. With both girls away at college, I imagined returning home every evening to a loving wife who would focus her attention on me, and vice versa. I pictured us rekindling our connection, leading to days filled with happiness. It was almost like being newlyweds once more. We could enjoy dinners out, attend plays and movies, and finally rediscover each other the way I had always wished. However, reality didn't unfold exactly as I had envisioned. To be honest, looking back on that first year of having an empty nest, I noticed Karen undergoing changes. It seemed like her interests were shifting. While the shift was gradual, it became more evident with time. Initially, I thought these changes were her way of flourishing now that our daughters were no longer living with us. However, I eventually realized that what I was observing was a significant transformation in her values and priorities. Karen is an English teacher, specializing in creative writing. To be fair, she's also a frustrated writer. Being a young mother and teacher, she never really had the chance to write as she wanted. During the summer and whenever she could spare an hour or two, Karen dedicates time to writing. But so far, not much has come out of it. She used to send her essays and short stories to literary magazines, only to accumulate a collection of rejection letters. The grand masterpiece she hoped for never materialized. I'll admit, I do enjoy reading her writing, but as a writer, she's never gone beyond formulaic and sometimes overly dramatic stories. She has a romanticized notion of what a writer should be, and secretly, I suspect she's more attracted to the idea of being a writer than the actual writing. Nevertheless, if she's content, then I'm content too. Throughout most of our marriage, Karen has been a member of various writing groups. These are gatherings of people who come together to help each other by providing critiques, suggestions, and discussions on their work, aiming to improve each other's writing. Some of these groups have seemed genuinely productive to me, while others appear to be more like clubs of mutual admiration. Her last group, which was the one she belonged to when things fell apart, had elements of both. They took turns meeting at each other's homes, and during their meetings here, I'd try to give them space. I attempted to participate once, but Karen and a few others disapproved, so I stopped trying. Karen's current writing group consists of around 10 members, including both men and women. I'm fond of some of them, while others I could do without. Half of them are rather unremarkable, and the other half leave a strong impression when you meet them. For instance, Reggie, a woman, is heavily invested in writing histories and biographies. She conducts real research and writes books with a scholarly aspect while still aiming to engage readers. I've read all of her books and enjoyed them. Betty has a penchant for writing fantasy. I don't think she envisions herself as the next J.K. Rowling. She leans more towards the talking unicorn type. She's friendly, and her writing seems to be mainly for her own pleasure. Who can argue with that? Bill assumes the role of the group's know-it-all. A little of that goes a long way, but aside from that, he seems all right. Then there's Frank. I felt alarmed the first time I met him, and those alarms have continued to ring in my head ever since. When I met Frank, It was quite clear that I was being introduced to him rather than the other way around. He looked at me and asked, "So, Andy, what's your profession?" I glanced at my wife, who gave me a slight frown and shook her head. I simply responded, "I'm an engineer, Frank." Did he offer a smile or more of a smirk in return? I mentioned that I had given up attempting to engage with their group, preferring to stay somewhat hidden and unobtrusive, though not exactly out of earshot when they visit. I'll often be in the next room quietly working or on the back porch with a window open, so I can hear their conversation until they forget I'm around. I noticed early on that when Frank talks with Karen, they seem to share private jokes and a connection that makes me uncomfortable. Sometimes he boosts her ego, and other times it's as if he knows her inner thoughts in a way I don't appreciate. He references past conversations that seem to be only between them, and I get the impression that the rest of the group doesn't remember those moments. It's just a feeling, but I'm not fond of it, and I've told her so. She brushes off my concerns, and I've learned not to push the matter. I've made sure she understands my sentiments, the rest is up to her. The group follows a routine during their meetings. After their work session, they relax with some wine and unwind. It's during this time that I realize some of them are merely putting on an act. It happened in the middle of the spring semester, around early March, when the topic shifted to the lifestyles of true writers. "Oh, you know all the famous writers were alcoholics." That's right. They wrote in the mornings and drank in the afternoons and evenings. It relaxes the mind and opens it up to new ideas. Then, in the mornings, their creative thoughts start flowing, and they begin to write. In fact, the truly accomplished writers all experienced romantic relationships. That's what truly motivated them. That's what Frank was saying. "Thanks for sharing, Frank. I'm starting to understand where you're coming from." That's when Karen's words hit me like a punch in the gut. "Oh, absolutely. It's the intensity and the thrill of the unknown, the excitement of keeping it all hidden from everyone else that's where the genuine inspiration is found." Some of them chuckled, while others didn't, so I convinced myself it was just a jest. Yet, I kept an ear on their conversation for the rest of the evening. "Maybe we should all have a wild night of passion sometime, and then we'll each write the next great American novel." That came from Bill. I couldn't quite figure out if he meant it humorously or not. Character flaws don't serve as the basis for exceptional writing. What truly builds outstanding stories are qualities like humanity, empathy, and confronting the mysteries of the unknown. I mentioned before that I liked Betty. Unforgettable stories are about overcoming challenges, striving for greatness despite all odds, and leaving the world in a better state than it was before. Well, perhaps if you conjure the right enchantment, we can avoid all the hassle. That was that jerk Frank again. To their disgrace, some in the group seemed to find that amusing. I'm not so sure Betty did, and I had a hunch Reggie didn't either. They carried on talking about writers' drinking habits and affairs, and I continued to eavesdrop without giving anything away. Then I caught an intriguing part of their conversation. "Is anyone else planning to apply for the Illinois Writers' Workshop this summer?" Frank was speaking once more. "Oh, I already submitted my application. I'm keeping my fingers crossed they'll accept me. 6 weeks of just writing and discussing with fellow writers. It could really transform things for me." It was Karen, and this was the first time I had heard about it. Frank picked up on it right away. "I'm sure they'll accept you. Your writing has shown so much improvement this past year. I believe you'll be admitted. I've applied as well, although I'm not as certain I'll get in." My internal radar for nonsense was off the charts. "Seriously, Frank, when did you become so modest?" I didn't like what I was hearing, but at this juncture, I still cared deeply for and trusted my wife. When you've been married as long as we have, trust is fundamental. You don't question, "Is she up to no good?" The thought doesn't even cross your mind. Marriage is a partnership, and your spouse is your other half. She's shown her commitment year after year, and all you truly desire is for her to find the success and happiness she deserves. Or at least, that's what you believe. Then later on, it all crumbles when you discover your trust has been shattered. Update 1. As time went by, I allowed myself to put aside that evening's overheard conversation. Just like I mentioned, I had full trust in my wife. Some younger guys might not get that, but after being married for over 20 years, trust becomes a way of living rather than just a choice. It was late April, and I was finishing up some gardening outside when I decided to call it a day and head indoors. As I reached for the kitchen door, I caught my wife talking on the phone, saying, "I can't wait. 6 whole weeks without any responsibilities, no commitments, and no one waiting for me to get back." I perked up at that last part. I froze in place and listened. Absolutely. It's going to be the most self-indulgent 6 weeks of my life. I owe it to myself. And so do you. None of this sat well with me. I pushed the door open and entered the kitchen. Karen seemed startled. "Well, I have to run. Ab is here, and I need to start preparing dinner." She hung up quickly. Who was that on the phone? "Oh, just Reggie. We were talking about school wrapping up soon." Like hell it was, I thought. I wanted to question her about certain things she had said, especially that part about no one waiting for me to come home, but I sensed that the truth might be in short supply tonight. My mood darkened, but I made an effort to conceal it for the moment. Later that night, after dinner, the other shoe dropped. Ab, you won't believe the fantastic news I received today. Remember that writer's workshop in Illinois I applied for? No. Come on, you hardly pay attention to me. To be honest, I had heard about that workshop before, but that was only because I'd overheard her discussing it that night over a month ago. I don't recall you mentioning it. Yes, I did. I applied for a 6-week writer's workshop. It's from mid-June to late July at the University of Illinois. They have lectures by their professors, and they bring in accomplished writers for seminars and discussion groups, and then we do a lot of writing. It's a wonderful opportunity, and I got accepted. That sounds wonderful, honey. I'm sure we can manage it financially. Maybe I can take a little time off work and join you. I'd love to listen to those writers' talks. Her reaction seems surprised. Oh, well, we can consider it. It's going to be a really intense 6 weeks, and I won't have much free time to spend with you. My instincts were tingling again. Well, you know I'm not demanding, and maybe I could be the coffee guy for the group. She offered a slightly nervous smile. That could be nice, dear. Let's see how it goes. I've been in the receiving end of such deflections before, and I knew what it meant. She was planning to ensure I wouldn't end up going to Illinois with her. I get the feeling you'd rather I didn't go with you. Oh, no, it's not like that. I just worry you might find it dull. You're into computers and circuits, and this is just writers talking about big ideas. Vic. I didn't voice it, but mentally, I was shouting it loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. I'm not unintelligent, honey. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. I'm just saying your mind leans towards details, while writers grapple with larger life questions. Big Vic. But I kept that thought to myself. I could tell when I was being sidelined. I'm sure you'll excel. She's caught up tonight. Later that evening, after Karen had gone to bed, I logged onto the internet to review our phone records. AT&T offers that feature. All incoming and outgoing calls, along with text messages, are recorded. I examined the phone log and the call that I had interrupted wasn't with Reggie, or if it was, it originated from Frank's phone. It's astonishing how quickly trust can crumble after a quarter-century of marriage when you catch your wife lying and discover her making plans to exclude you. Weeks passed, and she seemed consumed by discussions about the workshop. I attempted multiple times to discuss the idea of going with her or visiting at some point, but she dismissed the idea each time. Then she shifted from rationalization to manipulation. Ab, I've got the most exciting news. I got you and Jake 2 tickets to a fishing camp in northern Canada in late June. You can take Jake and both of you can enjoy fishing for those big brown fish you're always talking about. It was quite expensive, but I wanted to express my gratitude for your understanding about the writer's workshop, and I felt a bit guilty that you wouldn't be enjoying yourself. So, I want you to go and have a great time. Then we can share our experiences when I return. I suspected something wasn't right. Thanks, dear. That was considerate of you. Honestly, I'd have a better time with you. Ab, we've been through this. It's just not logical. I'll be working throughout, and I'd feel bad neglecting you like that. I studied her face and eyes briefly, trying to interpret what I saw. Was it condescension? Thanks, honey, Canada sounds fun. My tone lacked enthusiasm. In my mind, I was plotting my options. A surprise trip to Illinois was at the forefront. Well, you could at least say it with a smile. Those tickets were expensive, and I want you to be happy. Sure, sounds fun. I headed down to the basement to tinker for the rest of the evening. Our house is old and has one of those floor grates in the hallway. It lets warm air flow from the furnace room and was the original way of heating the first floor. Initially, I made a point not to step on it accidentally, but over time, I grew used to it and forgot about its presence. The phone is also in the hallway. I was quietly working in the basement, contemplating my next steps when I overheard Karen making a call. Yes, I gave him the tickets. He's still hesitant. I don't know. I keep telling him he won't enjoy it. No, I can't just tell him not to come. I understand, and I want that too, but I want to stay married afterward. I just need him to give me some space to enjoy myself for a few weeks. I deserve it. I've earned it. Yes, I want those weeks with you as well. All right, let's wait a bit. I think he'll come around. Okay, baby, I miss you too. Write something great for me tonight. With that, she ended the call. I felt a lump in my throat. I'm not clueless. I recognize infidelity when I hear it. Either Karen was in an affair or considering one. Anything less and she'd still have a lot of explaining to do. It took me 20 minutes to gather my thoughts, but I knew that for now, I had to become the kind of liar I've always detested. At least for the moment, I needed to keep my intentions hidden until I figured out my plan. I called upstairs and in my most affectionate tone said, Karen, I'm heading over to see Jake and give him the good news. Oh, that's great, dear. Enjoy. And just like that, I was out the basement door. I needed distance. Visiting Jake was merely an excuse. As I pondered it, I realized I needed someone to confide in, and Jake had been my closest friend since childhood. You're kidding me. Jake never beat around the bush. No way, I don't buy it. She'd never betray you, Ab. Well, she's certainly working hard to keep me away from that workshop. And she's calling someone baby, and it's definitely not me. We just sat there, silent. That's what most guys need from a buddy, just sitting together, sharing the pain. You need to have a conversation with her about this, Ab. You can't go through the next couple of months assuming the worst without knowing the truth. And what's she going to say? How much do you want to bet that when I checked the phone records tonight, it wasn't Frank she was talking to, it wasn't Frank she called baby, and it wasn't Frank she's plotting with? I'm not taking that bet. So, what's your plan? I'm going to sit down and have an honest talk. That's what you do after being together for 25 years. I'll express my love for her, let her know I'm hurt that she doesn't want me to go with her, and I'll straightforwardly ask her what she's up to that she doesn't want me there. Do you think she'll tell you the truth? Nope. But I'll tell her the truth, even if some of it isn't what she wants to hear. She'll understand how much I love her. She'll know that cheating on me would end our relationship. And then she'll probably try to convince me that I'm imagining things and should just go fishing. I paused for a moment. By the way, I've got 2 tickets for a fishing camp in northern Canada in late June, and one's for you. Nice. Jake caught himself. I mean, I'm here to support you, buddy. I had to chuckle. I've always been sure where his loyalty lies. We chatted, shared our thoughts, and had a few drinks over the next 3 hours before I headed home. After dinner, I asked Karen to come sit with me in the living room, and I opened up about everything that had been bothering me. Well, almost everything. I held back a couple of things. Sweetheart, I've got some serious concerns. I don't believe you've been completely upfront with me about this writer's workshop. I overheard you discussing it with your writers group back in March, yet you didn't mention it to me until you had already made plans to attend. I even overheard you talking about how affairs are common among great writers, and I must admit I didn't find that amusing. You've been having conversations with Frank about your trip, but when I inquire, you give me false information and claim it's someone else. You're aware of my feelings about that guy. Then, when you told me about getting accepted, you seemed purposely distant and discouraged me from being a part of it. I don't have to be there, but I wanted to share in this exciting journey with you. Instead of considering that, you made arrangements for me to be somewhere else, without even discussing it with me, just making a commitment on my behalf. It appears like you're trying to ensure that I won't be around while you're in Illinois. I don't think you've been completely honest with me, and I'm starting to question whether you've been completely faithful. Ab, I've never treated you that way, and I would never be unfaithful to you. What's gotten into you? You're my husband, and all I want is for you to have a good time. It really hurts me that you could think something like that about me. I can't control how I feel or what triggers those feelings. You know I love you. I've loved you since we first met, but I can't just overlook the idea of betrayal. Is that what you're planning, Karen? Is this writer's workshop meant to be your escape from our marriage? Update 2, that was the end of our conversation, no more understanding or affectionate talk. She exploded into yelling, and for the rest of the night, it was either shouting or silence from her. And for the following week, it was all silence. She was using the silent treatment as a way to force me to back down, trying to push me to submit. However, it didn't work. In fact, it only strengthened my convictions. But I realized I wasn't making progress this way, so eventually, I allowed her to believe she had succeeded. If she was planning to cheat, there wasn't much I could do to prevent it. The phone conversation I overheard even suggested she might have already done so. Eventually, I thanked her for the trip to Canada, but my mood remained gloomy, and it didn't lift until the trip was over. Once she got what she wanted, she quickly changed her demeanor and acted like a loving wife to reinforce the behavior she wanted from me. It was as if she flipped a switch, and that only heightened my suspicion. I recognize manipulation when I'm on the receiving end of it. The Illinois Writers' Workshop was about 500 miles away, and I didn't know anyone there. So, I asked a coworker who he consulted when he suspected his wife of cheating. I followed his advice, and the person he recommended was based in Illinois. I reached out to them for assistance. The workshop's location was advantageous, as it took place on a state university campus. The PILS operatives couldn't participate in the program, but they could move around the campus and observe the rooms as needed. The participants would dine in the campus cafeterias, visit local bars, and stay in a large dormitory with other students. This provided an opportunity for inconspicuous surveillance. Some of these students would actually be working for me, equipped with advanced devices. As the school year was coming to an end, our daughters decided to remain at their universities for the summer to work in research labs with their professors. This meant we were still empty nesters, and I made a concerted effort. I invited her to dinners, cooked at home, and took her to various shows. She seemed to enjoy everything, and I started to believe I was making progress. However, whenever I expressed my love for her, I sensed a dismissive I know attitude from her. Slowly, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. It wasn't that she had stopped loving me, she had simply taken me for granted. I was familiar, reliable, and her safety net. She felt assured that she could go away, seek excitement, take a break from our marriage, and I would be waiting when she returned. This realization led to my plans falling into place. The day she departed, I realized I couldn't leave things unspoken. We stood near the door as her shuttle for the airport arrived. Holding her tightly, I expressed my love and pleaded, "Please, don't do anything that could ruin us. In response, she shot me an irritated look and retorted, "I'm tired of you not trusting me. When I return, we'll have a serious conversation about this." She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, grabbed her bags, and headed toward the shuttle. She drove away without a single glance back at me. At that moment, I felt certain my marriage was coming to an end. After 25 years and our 2 grown daughters, it seemed our relationship was fading away without much of a fuss. The private investigator carried out his job effectively. According to him, they didn't bother hiding their actions, as they were in an unfamiliar place. Upon arrival at the workshop, Karen must have removed her wedding rings on the plane, as they were absent from her finger. She openly claimed to be recently divorced, and my wife and Frank immediately became inseparable. They were constantly together, sharing kisses, holding hands, and acting like infatuated high school students. My PI ingeniously placed a small video camera in the dormitory hallway where they stayed. Though Karen and Frank each had their own assigned room, they only used one of them. Occasionally, they used her room, sometimes his, but always they spent the nights together. I was already aware of what was transpiring in those shared dorm rooms, yet my PI and his team went to great lengths to confirm my suspicions. One evening, before it got dark, my wife and Frank retired early. 2 operatives, appearing like typical college students, sat against the hallway wall, discreetly slipping a miniature fisheye camera beneath the door. This device captured a 20-minute video of Frank in action.